Hey Pure Church family, welcome to our online campus experience. We are so glad you joined us today, and I'm going to tell you why. And part of it involves this style of filming I'm doing right now. I don't ever do this. It's not really what we do. This sort of YouTube, blogger style, walking around. We're actually in our studio right now, our film studio, and it's been a crazy week. There's been a lot of things going on. A lot of stuff shifted in our plans in the way we expected today's service and this week to go. But it is so good. It is so rewarding. I promise you are going to be blessed. And I am believing that by the time you get to that point of the service, we're actually going to be done with it because we're still working on it right now. You got to give Emily, who is really in charge of putting together most of our online campus experience, some big props and shout outs because she has been working extra hard along with other members of our team. But we have some stories about addiction, stories about recovery, stories about what God's doing in the midst of our For Now seasons, these times in our life where we don't understand why things are the way we are. We're struggling, we're battling, we're going through tough times. And today we're going to look at what is God's why? What does He want to do with that in our lives? We're wrapping up this For Now series, and I'm so excited for you guys to see today's message. Welcome to church.
Your love is extravagant. Your friendship intimate. I find I'm moving to the rhythms of your grace. Your fragrance is intoxicating in a secret place. God, your love is extravagant. Your friendship intimate. I find I'm moving to the rhythms of your grace. Your fragrance is intoxicating in a secret place. God, your love is extravagant. Spread wide in the arms of Christ is a love that covers sin. No greater love have I ever known. You considered me a friend, captured my heart again. Capture my heart again. God, your love is extravagant. Your friendship intimate. I find I'm moving to the rhythms of your grace. Your fragrance is intoxicating in a secret place. I find I'm moving to the rhythms of your grace. Your fragrance is intoxicating in a secret place. I find I'm moving to the rhythms of your grace. Our fragrance is intoxicating in a secret place. God, your love is extravagant. extravagant, and your love is extravagant, spread wide. Spread wide in the arms of Christ. It's the love that covers sin. No greater love have I ever known. You considered me a friend and captured my heart again. And captured my heart again. And capture my heart, capture my heart, capture my heart again. Capture my heart, capture my heart, capture my heart again. And your love is extravagant.
Welcome everybody to our online campus. I'm so glad that you joined us today. If you're coming from around the world tuning in today, welcome in the state of Arizona or even around the country. We are so glad that you're with us today. Crossroads Recovery, guys, we love you so much. Tell Pastor Todd a big hey today. Also David Bryan, if he's hanging out with you guys today, give him a shout out as well. One of the biggest moments of my life was at age 27. I had gone through a painful divorce. My first wife had left for another man. I've been sharing a little bit about this story throughout the series. I had been 3 months into my divorce, 3 months since I found out that my wife was with another man. And I got invited to be a part of this singles conference in Prescott, Arizona, singles retreat. And so I'm sitting there and I'm part of the leadership team and they're going around the table and talking about the breakout sessions and what they're going to do. And they said, we need to do a breakout session on divorce. And every person in the room turned and looked at me and says, Dan, could you lead that? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm 27 years old. I'm 3 months into this. I'm still bleeding out in my soul. But sure, if you need somebody to lead it, I'll lead it. I remember walking into the lobby of this cabin. There's about 15 people sitting in a circle that already got there before I did. I remember sitting down and looking around the room and realizing that I'm 27. There's not a single person in this room under the age of 40. And there was actually a couple ladies in the room that were 55 to 60 years of age. You could feel the pain in the room. You could smell the abandonment and the shame in the air. And they all turned to look at me like, so what do you have to say? How are you going to encourage us? And I started praying like, God, help me, help them. Help me, help them. Now, time has passed and I'm no longer in my mid-20s. I'm not even in my mid-30s. I'm no longer in my mid-40s. I'm now in my mid-50s. And I'm going to tell you something today. I discovered a powerful, purposeful vision from God. I'm going to call it the solidarity of suffering. Over my years in ministry, over my years of loving and working with people, I've discovered what I'll call a solidarity of suffering. That there's a bond between those who suffered deeply and similarly. There's a real bond there. Let me say it this way. When someone who's been there walks into the room of someone who's still there, something powerful happens there. It's not just sympathy or empathy. It's life anchoring. It's soul anchoring, what takes place in that moment. Now, in today's message, I'm going to be sharing 2 videos with you, 2 moments of testimony from some amazing leaders in our Crossroads ministry. Crossroads is a great partnership for us as a church family. We care deeply about those who are going through recovery, dealing with addiction. And so we have some folks who are going to share a little bit of their story, and then I'm going to close with their story today. We're going to be sharing some of the full extent of these stories, the longer version of these stories online over the next couple of weeks. We'll be rolling them out. But today we're going to give you some of the highlights and actually a little bit start with some of the lowlights of some of the pain that some of these amazing people who serve people every day on our Glendale campus with Crossroads Recovery. Listen to a little bit of their story.
You know, despair to me means that there's no hope that tomorrow is going to be any better than today was, right? And I was living the worst day of my life over and over and over again.
I was disregarded and I was thrown away like trash. And when you're on that road, you're broken and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
I laugh when people say rock bottom because I would hit a rock bottom and then I grab a shovel and continue to go deeper.
In the midst of my addiction, the emotions that I would feel were a lot of loneliness, emptiness, low self-worth, low self-esteem. Those of us that have had a lifestyle of chaotic drug use, we don't like to feel, so we numb out.
By all means, I did not have an upbringing that would have led one to believe that I would spend the better part of my 40s living on the streets, strung out on meth and fentanyl.
I grew up in a great household, and I am the product of drugs do not discriminate.
At 16 years old, I was in a motorcycle accident at a race, was prescribed prescription painkillers, and it started my addiction to opiates.
My parents split and divorced when I was 14, which was really hard on me. I started hanging out with the wrong kids, started using marijuana at the age of 16, slowly started partying more and drinking and getting into other substances. I had dealt with some pain issues and got into pain management and continued to use opiates.
That's what my whole life revolved around, was me feeding my addiction, and that's all I cared about.
I started shoplifting from Walmart, from Kohl's, wherever I could find anything that I could get rid of, you know, either pawn it or sell it or trade it so that I could get high because I was desperate. Robbing stores, selling drugs, you know, selling pills and knowing that someone had taken those pills and passed away, right? Doing just despicable things in order to feed that demon that's inside of me that says that I need to get high. One time, there was a man that I saw overdosing and I had Narcan on me, right? So that I could revive him and I could bring him back. And that's exactly what I did, but I didn't do it because God wanted me to. I didn't do it because it was the right thing to do. I did it because I knew that he had drugs that were so strong that they killed him. And my hope was that he still had enough left that I could get those drugs from him and take them myself.
I was on the run from the cops for about 2 years, and in that 2-year time span, I was committing all the crimes that you could think of so I can feed my addiction, to get money, to get more drugs.
I encountered, many situations where I ended up in jail. One of the times I had caught a shoplifting charge and I ended up going to jail, getting released, and I was sick and I was desperate, so I broke into a house, ended up, finding some guns and stuff like that in the closet, and went to leave the house, and a guy came walking in with his 2 young children. He was dressed in full tactical gear. I had just broken into the SWAT sergeant of TPD's house.
I remember one evening when I had gone shoplifting to get stuff because I was sick. I was withdrawing from the fentanyl and I needed a fix bad. So I was running across the street with all these goods that I had stolen, and I was run over by a truck. My leg was broken, and I was just laying there thinking that this is what I deserve, but I was okay with it because I was in so much pain inside here, not even from my leg. The leg I couldn't care less about, but just my soul was crushed at that point. Finally, my wife had enough. She ended up leaving me and taking our 2 daughters and moving back to her home state in Washington, knowing that for the first time a couple years ago when I got sober on Father's Day, that I had chosen drugs over my kids. That was really hard because I love my girls very much. My daughters are my everything.
I was sad all the time, and I couldn't figure out why I was sad all the time, why I wanted to get high. And then I would always resort back to my daughter not being in her life, feeling guilty, feeling shameful that I chose drugs over my beautiful baby girl that I had brought into this world. That fueled my addiction because I wasn't able to spend time with her, wasn't able to see her, and I felt like I had nothing to live for or to be sober for.
I wanted to die every day, and I tried to inflict as much pain on myself and other people to try and make myself feel better about my own current circumstances. My life was terrible, man. I lived in a storm drain underneath the Tucson Mall. Living in that environment, you know, it was dirty. I would have to crawl out of the storm drain on a daily basis in order to go and procure drugs and things that I needed in order to make that happen. So I remember specifically feeling like an animal, man. Like literally I'd have to get on my hands and knees and crawl out of a storm drain on a daily basis and then, you know, return into that storm drain at night.
I was thoroughly convinced that there was no place on this earth for me. There was no place in society for me.
I was thrown away into prison and I was forgot about.
Prison is not all it's cracked up to be. Not a good place to get sober or stay sober.
Being incarcerated shouldn't be the only way someone gets sober.
There was a couple times where I would be Googling certain ways to die and the fastest way to kill yourself. And I was kind of just like looking at my life and seeing where my life was currently. You know, I was doing about an ounce of heroin a week. I was selling heroin, I was selling pills, you know, using cannabis, drinking alcohol, and I was not happy. And I consciously made a decision that I wanted to change. It got to the point where I was just so broken and I, you know, had a breakdown in my bed, begging Jesus, praying to God, you know, take me through this withdrawal.
It's hard to even begin to imagine what some of those folks, some of these amazing leaders have been through. I'm so grateful they were willing to share their story today. And we're going to hear more about their story at the end of the message today. Now, my 2-year-old daughter, beautiful daughter, Olivia, she's starting to talk. Boy, she is going now. She can talk quite a bit. And her favorite question is, her favorite thing she says to me every morning is, what you doing? What you doing? She's constantly asking me, what you doing? Everywhere I go, what you doing? She's right behind me. What you doing? And I'm like, I'm getting my toothbrush. I'm combing my hair. What you doing? It's her favorite question. And the truth is, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. Can anybody relate to that today? But today, I believe God is going to tell us what we can do for now. When we're in that for now season, when there doesn't seem to be a way forward, there doesn't seem to be a way out, when we're just waiting on God to do what only God can do, I believe that God today is going to show each and every one of us. We've been talking a lot about what do we do in these seasons, but I think today God is going to show us what it is we truly can do to get through some of these painful for now seasons in our life. Now, here's the surprise observation. Something I think that will help us land this series, and it's key to my faith. It's central to my mission here at Pure Heart. It's actually central to the mission of the Pure Heart churches. And here's what we believe deep in our souls. Comforting is life-giving to the comforter as well. Comforting other people gives you life, gives you strength to when you're comforting other people. Now, here's the purpose. God's not going to waste your pain. He's going to use these painful things that you've been through in your life to bring purpose to that pain. And I love that about following Jesus. He brings purpose to my pain. It's not just pain for pain's sakes. I'm going to talk a little bit about the role that comfort plays in our for now seasons today. Now, when there's nothing you can do, no way forward, no way out, God, how are you going to use this? And we're going to continue today to be mentored by the Apostle Paul. We've been talking about him the last couple of weeks. And so he steps onto the pages of history, I've been talking about this, as a Jesus hater. He hated Christians. And then he gave his life to Jesus in a powerful encounter with Jesus. He becomes a Jesus follower. He starts planting churches all over the known world. And he starts his mission to the Gentiles. Now, if you're listening to this today and you are not of Jewish descent, all right, then you need to thank Jesus for the Apostle Paul. He was the first one to go to the Gentile people. Now, we're sitting here today listening to this mostly because of his bravery, and he suffered greatly. Matter of fact, in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, it describes Paul was in prison, beatings, stoned with rocks, shipwrecked, robbed, sleeplessness, hunger, thirsty, and at times he went naked. This man suffered greatly. Yet, how Paul starts this letter to the church in Corinth is absolutely beautiful. So he sits down, he writes this letter to his friends in Corinth. And in his second letter, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3, he starts this way. All praise to God. Again, I love that. With all that Paul's been through in his life, he's still going, God, I praise you. All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is our merciful Father. Or another translation is, he's the Father of compassion. See, here's a man who never knew when his life might be over, when he could be killed. And yet he says, praise the Father of compassion. Paul had a different perspective of God in his pain. God was his source of strength, not his source of suffering. He's a Father of compassion, Paul describes him as. One of my favorite titles for God, the Father of compassion. It carries with it the idea in the Greek language, the original language of the New Testament, this idea of a compassion that a father feels. And those of you who've had children or raising children, you get this as dads and moms. The compassion a parent feels or a father feels when a child is hurting. I've been thinking this last week back on some real tragic moments in our kids' lives when I felt that compassion. I remember my son Josh loved to play basketball. He got hit in the face. A kid went forehead straight into his mouth, split his lip open from the top of his lip all the way to the base of his nose, knocked out a tooth in the front of his mouth, blood everywhere. Sorry for the description here today, but I want you to know he's standing over a trash can and he looks at me, blood flowing in the trash can. He looks at me and he screams and he goes, "Why did this happen to me?" And I remember flying down I-17 in my SUV, trying to get him to an emergency dentist to get this tooth back into his mouth. I remember just looking in my rearview mirror, just feeling so much compassion for this kid who had worked out so hard to play ball and then had it all blown up, literally, in just a moment. I remember my son Luke got pneumonia at Christmas time. He was so sick. And finally, Nicole looked at me and she goes, "I think we need to take him to the emergency room." I remember taking him into the emergency room. They took us back to the little triage area. They were looking at his vitals. I remember the nurse looking at the screen, jumping out of the chair, running over the door, slamming it open and screaming down the hallway, "I need an ambulance, stat." Heart into my throat. I'm telling you what, I just wanted to pass out. And my son just sitting there can barely breathe and just overwhelmed as a dad. I remember Abby, when she was born, she had a cyst on her, right below her, right about here on her collarbone. And I remember she was just a baby and we went to Phoenix Children's to have the surgery, to have this removed. And I remember the nurse carrying my little girl and I could see my little girl's face over the nurse's back shoulder. And she was looking at me like, "Dad, why aren't you coming with me?" I remember standing in the NICU in the hospital when Olivia was born and Ava was born. Nicole and I, outside the nurses, were the first ones to get to hold them. These beautiful girls that we've had the joy of adopting. Both born addicted and exposed to fentanyl and heroin. I remember just holding them in my arms and just feeling such compassion for them, marveling at the miracle that they were to be alive and wondering, God, what's going to become of these girls? Are they going to have complications with their lives? Are they going to have complications with their brains? I can tell you today they're doing amazing. They're both two amazing miracles. But I remember the first time I held them, how my father's heart just leapt for them, just beat for them. And I hurt for what they were exposed to and what they had to go through in the womb. You see, no matter how big my kids get, no matter how old they get, and I still see them like this. Here's a picture of our oldest three. In my mind, they're still those little kids. Why? They'll always be that way, especially my daughter, because I love them. I have a father's heart for them. And I love the fact that Paul's saying in the midst of all of our pain, in the midst of the stuff that we go through, Father God has a father's heart of compassion for us. And as a dad, I get a little glimpse of what that must feel like for God the Father. 2 Corinthians chapter 1 continues and it goes on, not only the Father of compassion and the source of all comfort. This is more than just soothing sympathy. It's not like a Hallmark card. The idea here is to make you strong. Actually, in the Latin language, the word here is fortis, which means to make brave, to become brave. I love that. Not just sympathy, oh, it's going to be okay, everything's going to be all right, but the kind of comfort that makes a person strong, makes a person brave, makes a person say, I can move through this in my life. Now, watch. This gets better. Verse 4. He comforts us in all. I love that word right there. All. That means everything. All our troubles. But I have a question for you. When you're having trouble, when life's falling down around you, is the first thing you pray for comfort? No. Comfort's not the first thing I pray for. The first thing I pray for is, God, take this away from me. Make this trouble go away. Not comfort me in the trouble. It's like, God, take the pain away. And so Paul continues. He's taking us somewhere. He's taking us somewhere very healing today. So watch this, verse 4. He comforts us in all our troubles so that, now that's a purpose statement. So that what, Paul? What's going to happen? So that I can be comforted? Is he comforting me in all of my troubles so that I can be comforted? No. If that's what you think he's going to say next, you're wrong. It's not what he says next. And what he says next is actually kind of surprising. And for the first century, maybe not as surprising as the 21st century, because in the 21st century, all we care about is our comfort, okay? A little different in the first century. So he says this, watch this. This is why we're comforted. He comforts us in all of our troubles so that we can, again, stop one more time, we can what? All right, the word here for can in the Greek language is to make possible, to be powerful, to be empowered to do something. And we have to think to ourselves, man, I hope I'm empowered so that I can get out of this mess, get over this mess, so that for now, the season can end. But here comes my life verse. And this is what Paul's building to today. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4. And I've anchored so much of my approach to ministry, really the purpose of my life, around this moment that Paul wrote. He said this, so that we can not just be comforted ourselves, comfort others. When they are in trouble, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given to us. That is such a beautiful, powerful statement. This is a big deal. It's interesting because in the Greek language, this reads with two different understandings. There's two words for comfort. The first one is the idea of to empower, to make strong, to make brave. But the second word in the Greek language for comfort means to draw near or to call someone near to you, to be close to them. Just as at times in your life where you may have felt God's nearness when you're going through a difficult season. As a matter of fact, I talked about this a couple weeks ago in this series when some of the painful things I've gone through in my life, and I felt God come near to me and draw near to me with his peace and his strength and his comfort. We then can draw near to other people who are hurting. I got to spend some time with my mom just before this recording. And in some ways, it's a little bit why I'm extra tired and a little bit emotional today. But I was able to draw near my mom who's wrestling with ALS. I got to come close to her and comfort her and encourage her and strengthen her in these troublesome days, painful days of her life. You see, we have the ability to come near those who are in trouble, who are hurting, who are suffering, as God comes near to us. And our willingness to trust God and experience his powerful comfort, it allows us to walk through the gates of the hurting, to bring them the comfort that we ourselves have also received from God. We get to be his ambassadors, his representatives of comfort. See, Paul believes in the power of miracles. Paul prayed for people and miraculous things happen. He raised a dead young boy to life. Paul saw so many miracles, but he says, there are times that God's not going to deliver us from. He's going to deliver us through so that we can help other people get through. You see, my suffering will be used to help other people, to heal those who are hurting. That's part of my life mission. My life is bigger than me. Your life is bigger than you. And even the most painful times of our life can be used to help other people. God wastes nothing. All things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. The good, the bad, and the ugly, all of it. God can use it on purpose in your life. It's one of the greatest reasons I follow Jesus, because he doesn't waste my pain. But this is hard. This is hard. And I would imagine, especially for people who wrestle with addiction, because once we get out of that for now season, once we move past that, we often don't want to be reminded of it anymore. We don't want to go back to that sewer. We don't want to go back to that mess. We don't want to go back to that pain. Going back and helping others sometimes can remind us of the pain that we were once in. But Paul says, no. It's not just going to remind you. It's going to heal you. It's going to do something deep in your soul as you take the pain you've went through and use that pain to help other people. When you take that comfort and you comfort others, it's going to heal you in a deeper way than if you just go on and live your life selfishly. Paul says, I promise you this. You have been comforted so that you can be a comfort to other people. So here I am in this breakout class on divorce, this conference center, and there's 15 people sitting around listening to this 27-year-old kid coming to tell them something about how to heal from the most broken moment of your life. I shared some thoughts. I think I had a little 3 Ps: peace with God, peace with yourself, peace with your ex-spouse. I don't know. But what I did do in that moment is I just basically shared my story. I just told everybody in that room, once I got through my beautiful alliteration of the 3 Ps, I put my notes to the side and I just said, let me tell you my story. Let me tell you what God's doing in my life right now, 3 months in to the most painful thing I've ever faced. Total rejection from my wife. I finished the story, and I mean, I was a crying mess. I mean, those of you who tune in each week or be a part of the services every weekend, you know, I get choked up, I get emotional, and you know, I used to be embarrassed by that, but now I just embrace it and go, God, thank you that you made me feel things deeply. I'm grateful for that. And so I finished, and I mean, I was a snotty mess at the time, and I went and blew my nose and kind of was walking around the room, kind of regrouping myself, and everybody was kind of walking out quietly. And this 55-year-old lady, last one out of the room, she kind of lingered behind, and she came to the doorway where I was standing as I was saying goodbye to everybody, and she looked me right in the eyes, and she said, young man, I want to tell you something. And in my mind, I'm going, oh boy, this ought to be great. She goes, when you first walked into this cabin 2 hours ago, I thought to myself, what does this young punk, just out of Bible college, what does he have to share with me about my pain? What can he possibly know about pain? What were the organizers of this conference even thinking, letting this kid come in here and talk to all of us about divorce? And then a tear came flowing down this cheek, and another one came down this cheek. And she said, thank you for sharing your story with me. I have been so bitter and so angry. I've had no peace in my life. And when you shared your 3 Ps about peace, I thought, oh, that's clever. But when you shared your story, something changed inside of me. God moved in my heart. And for the first time since my husband left, I've been able to whisper words in my soul. I forgive you. God, heal my heart. I've been so angry and so upset. She walked out of the cabin. I stood there in the doorway for a moment looking out at the pine trees in Prescott, Arizona, and the Holy Spirit just whispered this impression into my soul. He said, Daniel, if you'll trust me and you keep being vulnerable about the pain that you're going through, and you keep sharing about how I'm comforting you in the midst of your pain, I promise I'll bring purpose to this pain like you never dreamed possible. Here's what I can tell all of you listening today. I've been in ministry now for 30 years. I started when I was 5. Just kidding. I've been in ministry for 30 years. We've seen on our Glendale campus alone in the last 18 years, over 10,000 people commit their lives to follow Jesus. It's amazing what God's done in our church family. But I can tell you, the weekends where I'm vulnerable about my story, and I know some people are like, he seems to tell his story a lot, tell stories about his life a lot. The reason I do that is when I'm vulnerable like that, it lets people know that they're not alone. It opens their heart to the comfort of God because God has comforted me. And I want to come near to them with the comfort God has given me and let them know you too can move through this. And I'm telling you, more people make decisions to follow Jesus when I'm vulnerable about my life than in any other time I give an invitation for salvation. God has brought purpose to my pain. Otherwise, if I just kept it inside, if I didn't share what I've been through, didn't share the comfort that God has given me, I'd have no purpose in it. It would just be selfish. It would just be what God's done for me. But using that to help other people has changed my life, has changed Pure Heart, it's changed the way that we do ministry. That's why we say all the time around here, it's okay to not be okay, and you don't have to pretend, and you don't have to stay stuck. See, we have all kinds of people at Pure Heart who do what they do because of what they've been through, because of what God's brought them through. We have people in our church who minister to people who've lost children from sudden infant death, SIDS. We have people in our church who've been through divorce and they help people get through divorce. People wrestle with mental illness who help people through mental illness. People have wrestled with cancer who've been healed and helping people go through cancer. Financial brokenness, helping people with financial brokenness. Addiction, helping people get through addiction. There's so many amazing stories in our church of people who are helping others. Matter of fact, I got to tell you the story. A couple weeks ago in my sermon, I talked about people in our church family that I knew that had lost jobs and were in these, for now, seasons of wondering what's going to happen financially and feel like we're going to go broke as a joke and what do we do? And they're just overwhelmed with trying to find a job. I got a text from a friend of mine. He said, hey, do you have a minute? I need to ask you something. So I called him and he told me a terrible story about being let go from his job. He says, I can't believe it. Here I am in my mid-40s. I got let go from my job and I'm just kind of wrestling with what to do next. And he said, I'm going to be honest with you, Dan, I've just been overwhelmed lately. And I heard you talking about other people that you know, they're going through the same thing. And then he said this to me. He said, my wife and I, for many, many years, have been storing a little bit of money away, a little bit of money away, a little bit of money away in case there was ever an emergency. They followed the old, Dave Ramsey principle of the emergency fund. And he said, I've got some money set aside. It's not a lot. It's not going to last me a long time. So I'm really hoping God finds me a job. And I'm a little bit freaked out about it. I've never had to dip into this account ever. He said, but I was driving down the road, overwhelmed with, anxiety about what's going to happen and what about my job. And the Holy Spirit just gave me this sense. And he just called my heart. He put this impression on my heart. He said, I want you to take some of that money in your emergency fund. And I want you to give it to somebody who's in the same exact circumstances that you're in. So I told him a couple stories of a couple of my friends, and one of the friends that I know of was right at his same age, had a child getting ready to go to college. He said, that's the one. I told him 3 stories. And he said, he picked that story. He said, that's the one. And so this amazing friend met this other gentleman on this, I think they met in a parking lot, and he handed him an envelope of cash. And he said, I'm in your same circumstance. I had a little bit of money set aside, and God challenged me to comfort you and to encourage you. And I remember thinking, when I heard that story, I was just thinking to myself, that's it. That's what Paul's talking about. That even in the midst of our struggle, if we're willing to say, God, use me in this pain to help someone else. And he said, you know what? Fear pushed away. I felt so much joy. He says, I haven't had that kind of joy in a long, long time. See, his comforting others was even more comforting to him. And that's what all these amazing leaders at Crossroads would tell you as they push through to stay clean and sober. As they help other people, as they work that 12th step, if you will, to help others with how God has helped them, they get stronger as well. Here's a little bit more of their stories.
My sobriety date is January 3rd of 2023. I had gotten out of jail and I had went to a sober living house. I lived there for 3 months. I attended church. I attended 12-step meetings.
I got sober in February 23rd in 2022. I went through Crossroads Arcadia, and after doing 30 days at Arcadia, I found out that they had an IOP program here at my former church, Pure Heart.
March 29th of 2023, went through residential treatment, Crossroads East, started to learn the things that I needed to do on a daily basis in order to stay sober.
My journey to sobriety began in 2017. Mind you, I only have 18 months of sobriety at this moment in my life, so it wasn't a perfect one and done journey. But that's where the journey began. I was driving down 43rd Avenue one day and I drove past Pure Heart Church and remembered that evening in 2017 when I was baptized while at Crossroads. I recalled that Crossroads has a outpatient program here on campus, and I came in enrolled the next day.
It helped me gain tools into living a happy and healthy life. I attended therapy. I attended classes to be able to gain knowledge on my addiction and how to cope with everyday life without using drugs or alcohol.
I attended every single group session. I was enrolled in the program for 12 weeks. I obtained the tools that I needed to learn how to live life and cope without escaping or numbing and getting high.
I got reintroduced to the faith through an online cast with Pastor Dan that they would do on Sundays, and started from there rebuilding my personal relationship. What that looks like for me is prayer, meditation, and just showing love to people in my same situation.
I completed that program after 144 hours of treatment, and I became a case manager for Crossroads at Pure Heart. I knew it was going to change my life, but I didn't know that it was going to be something that would affect the rest of my life in the way that it has.
He is using me as a tool to give back to those that are still searching and on their journey to find all the great things that Jesus can do for you.
I sat in those same seats that the clients sit in. God knew exactly where my life was going to go. He knew that I was going to spend over 21 years in active addiction. What I do now, getting to meet with clients and run groups and share my experience and be able to listen to them and showing them that there is a way out of the darkness.
I work with alcoholics and addicts all day, and it's not because like I feel like I have to, but it's because I feel like it's my like divine purpose. It seems really selfish of me not to reach out to those individuals and show them love and compassion, impart a little bit of hope that there's a chance for a better tomorrow.
He's empowered me to be able to reach out to those that are still suffering, see people that are homeless on the streets and they're sitting there at those bus stops slumped over like I was. It's a powerful reminder to me that we can recover, right? All it takes is that one person reaching out, man, might be the difference between life and death for that person.
I hope that everyone can feel the forgiveness and love that I've felt. I strongly believe that what I went through in my past, I am here for a greater purpose, and I am here to give others the tools to live that happy life and to be successful and give them purpose as well.
I've always wanted to help others, and I get to do that every single day by working with clients that are struggling, some of them that are actively using, some of them that have done, residential and they're transitioning to like an aftercare. And that's all because of God. I've seen him numerous times over the last 2.5 years of my sobriety work in my life.
And my life has completely changed, man. I'm of service as much as I can be inside and outside of the program. I show up for other addicts. I feel like it's my calling to like show those people love and compassion that nobody else showed me when I was in that situation.
My experiences as an addict, as a homeless person, as somebody that was lost to this world, have allowed me to connect with those people on a very personal level. It's hard to explain how lonely that feeling is when you are disconnected from God and from the other people on this planet, right? It's soul-crushing feeling to feel like you are all alone in this world. I'm blessed today because God has reminded me that I'm not alone and nobody else has to be alone.
Weren't those just amazing stories? I mean, come on. Go, Jesus, go. So here it is. This is how we're going to end today. First of all, two things. First of all, you're listening and you're ready to make the most important decision of your life, to connect with Jesus in relationship with him, to come home to his love and his strength and his power. His power can meet you in any circumstance you're in right now. And so for some of you, for the first time, or others of you, maybe years ago, you asked Christ into your life, but you just started doing your own thing. And you just be honest with me today. You say, I need to restart with Jesus. I just feel like I've just drifted in my relationship. So maybe for you, it's a rededication of your life to Christ. So if that's you, for the first time or today, you want to rededicate your life to Christ, would you just pray this with me right now in your heart, in your own words? Jesus hears you. Just tell him this. Lord Jesus, in this moment, I commit my life to follow you. I trust you with my life. Jesus, forgive me of my sin. That's so important. Say that. Forgive me of my sin. Thank you for your forgiveness. Now, Jesus, would you fill me with your very presence? Fill me with your peace and your power and your joy and your hope. Fill me up, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. And then secondly, I want to encourage you today. If you are in town in the greater Phoenix area and you attend one of our physical campuses from time to time, I want to encourage you. Please go on our website, pureheart.org. Go to our Serve tab, click it, and find a way to get involved in serving other people. Get involved in some of the stuff we're doing out in the community, stuff we're doing right here on our campus to help others. Find a way to serve others. And if you don't see something there that lines up with how God's comforted you in your life or where you really feel like God would call you to help other people, then get a hold of us, info@pureheart.org, and just say, hey, I couldn't find a place on the Serve tab to plug in. We'll reach out to you, get you connected, and talk with one of our pastors and help you find a ministry or help you get started with a ministry that you can use to help other people. Get out of your own world and get into the lives of other people. If you're around the world watching this or outside of the state of Arizona, then I just want to encourage you, find a place to serve in your community. If it's overcoming addiction that God's brought you through, get involved in maybe being a sponsor or get involved with AA or get involved doing something to give back to those who are wrestling with addiction. If you've gone through divorce, maybe find a grief share, find a divorce care group and get involved and start supporting other people who've been through the same thing. Whatever area God has healed you in and encouraged you in, or whatever you're in the midst of, find a way to give back. If you're concerned financially and maybe you're struggling with a job right now, find a food bank and start serving other people who are in that same place, looking and struggling and having fear. What am I going to eat? I'm telling you, when you do it, when you get out of your own world and you comfort others, you will be comforted. Pray you have a blessed week. We're starting a brand new series next weekend. Can't wait. We'll see you then.
Weren't those testimonies so good? I am so blessed that those guys did it. It was not an expected thing. They jumped in at the last minute. They were essentially given not much notice, and they were super nervous also, but I want to thank them personally for doing that, because here's the thing is, what they do every single week matters. It makes a difference. They're impacting people who are struggling, and sometimes struggling over and over. That's a journey of patience that we get to walk with on those people, that we get to show them the love of Christ over and over, because I know there's been some people in my life that they just haven't changed. But here's the thing too, is we never have arrived either, have we? We all are on that journey. And so as we're wrapping up this For Now series, if you haven't had a chance to go back and see it all, I want you to go back, because it's so crucial to see just what God can do in our lives in these seasons of pain, of struggle, when we just go, where are you at, God? We don't know. Also, God's doing some amazing things in our church. I want you to just go ahead, check this out, and it involves unreached people groups. Here we go.
6 months ago, we invited Project 42 to our church to share about their ministry. Their passion is to bring the gospel to the 42% of unreached people groups around the world. People who have never met a Christian or even heard that Jesus loves them. The heartbreaking truth is that only about 3% of overseas missionaries and less than 1% of church resources are dedicated to this cause in reaching these people. Many of the people in these places face persecution and rejection for those that do turn to Christ. These are the hardest places that have yet to be reached. And we know that this matters to God, and so it also must matter to us. You, Pure Heart Church family, you are such a generous church as you leaned in and committed financially to addressing this injustice. We reached our financial goal of funding this mission with pledges of over $210,000. It's so amazing that 400 families in our church are faithfully supporting this mission, providing more resources into these front lines so that new people can hear about the love of Christ. Check out this video just sent in by the founders, Justin and Tara Mack.
We just want to say a gigantic thank you for your faithfulness, for your generosity towards the vision and mission of Project 42, which is providing access to the 42% of the world that has never heard the gospel. On behalf of the nearly 500 frontline workers and organizations that we get to link arms with to provide access to the unreached, we just want to say thank you for your generosity, your faithfulness.
And we just want to ask you to join us in praying for those frontline workers. These are families and individuals who are working in really hard and difficult places. We're praying that they will have courage and tenacity, that the Lord will fill them full of faith. And in the same way, we're praying for you at Pure Heart, that the Lord will fill you full of faithfulness and courage and tenacity to do whatever you can to support those who are waiting for access to the gospel.
So again, we just want to say thank you to you, Pastor Dan, the whole leadership team, and every single individual that every single month is giving what they can, whether it's $42 or $4.20, whatever it is. Thank you for your faithfulness. It is making a difference in providing access to the unreached.
So I got those numbers today from our financial team of those pledges and the donations we've had up to this point, which is right on track with what people are pledging. And I just go, man, this is awesome. We've done a great job of reaching our community. We've done a great job of reaching our schools and pointing to addiction and things like that. But this was an area that we just realized, man, God, we haven't really gone into unreached people groups with what we're doing as a church. And so this was our opportunity to do that. So thank you, each and every one of you who has given into that mission. And if you want to give into the Pure Heart mission, you can go to pureheart.org/give. That lets all of us continue to be a part of making these online campus services that you can share with friends, you can bless other people in your life, and you can watch service on your time. Hey, a lot of times on YouTube they say, just like our videos, but here's the thing is, if you are blessed by this video, if you think it's worth more people seeing, go ahead, click a like. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out. And here's the reason why we can, if you like it or make a comment, is it gets it in front of more people's eyes. It helps that algorithm. So for last week's video, go ahead and click the link below. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.